The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's webinar, Introduction to the Small Business Innovation Research Small Business Technology Transfer Program. I'm Rebecca Todd, your presenter this morning. I work as Innovation Specialist for the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center. We are taxpayer funded to provide confidential one-on-one consulting, training, and market research services for entrepreneurs and established businesses all across the state. We have been working in Arkansas for over 40 years, and we have 9 regional offices throughout the state that allow us to help entrepreneurs and established companies. We have 2 more offices that will open later this year, which will bring us up to 11 total. Most of our regions also have at least one university-based center. Through our center's competitively awarded federal and state technology funds, the ASBTDC is able to offer continued outreach through events such as this webinar to share information about the SBIR STTR program for statewide and national audiences. We help entrepreneurs with each step of preparing and submitting small business innovation research or SBIR proposal applications, as well as state-level applications for supplemental technology funds. To date, our clients have won 74 SBIR STTR awards across the participating agencies, and through our industry database subscriptions, we can also help to locate market data to help these clients prepare key sections of their proposals, such as the commercialization plan. Everyone who's registered for today's event will be receiving a copy of the slides, as well as a link to the recording within 2 days via GoToWebinar email. So before we start, I want to make sure that everyone is ready and familiar with GoToWebinar. First, you should have a control panel on the right side of your screen. You can minimize the panel by clicking on the arrow button in orange, and that's in the upper left corner. You can expand the panel by clicking on that same button. So take a moment to practice. Second, you have the ability to submit questions using the question pane, which is located near the bottom of the control panel. And please do submit questions throughout today's presentation. We do have time reserved at the end for a Q&A session, so I'll be happy to take your questions at that point. Before we get started, I want to also give you a little bit of information about my background. So again, my name is Rebecca Todd. I'm Innovation Specialist for the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center, or ASBTDC. I've been in this role for 12 years now, and as Innovation Specialist, I work across the state to help entrepreneurs and established companies explore and respond to funding opportunities in the SBIR STTR program. The ASBTDC has helped Arkansas companies win over $30 million in SBIR STTR funds to date. And to supplement these awards, ASBTDC has assisted clients with winning over $6 million in state-level and venture capital funds. I attended the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, where I earned my bachelor's degree in biology and master's in animal science. I then studied professional technical writing at the UA Little Rock, where I earned my master's in the arts. Early on in my time at the ASBTDC, I've also become a certified business advisor as well as technology counselor. So with that, I'll go ahead and move into our agenda for today's presentation. So this is an overview of the different things we'll be talking about today. I want to give a little bit more insight about our services at ASBTDC, then an overview of the SBIR STTR program, how to find a fit for your particular idea within this program, market research to assess the need within the commercial market, how to protect your position within that market once you exit this program, and then some pre-writing steps. So every day, the ASBTDC helps Arkansans take ideas and turn them into businesses. Our work is project-based, and so we have ongoing relationships with companies that can go for years at a time. We really love to help our homegrown entrepreneurs as they follow their dreams and in turn build the state's economy. As I mentioned earlier, we have currently 9 offices in the state with 2 more on their way. So this is just a map to show you where we're located all across Arkansas. We do this so that we can meet with clients face-to-face and be there for them to attend our training workshops and as a convenience to help companies to be able to find us and meet with us whenever they're available and interested. So we help all sorts of clients. They include folks that are starting new businesses from scratch. They could also be those that are buying established businesses or looking to expand an existing business. And we also help those that are wanting to commercialize new research or technology. So I work with entrepreneurs that fit into that last category of technology commercialization. Many of these companies are seeking funds through the state and federal channels. They also might be looking at licensing, royalties, and private investment. I specialize in helping clients who want to pursue the federal SBIR and STTR contracts and grants. I want to give you an overview of what our impact has been on the state for 2020. These are numbers that we track for all of our clients in terms of how well they perform, obtaining capital, starting their businesses, growing new jobs, and increasing sales. So you can see we've had very exciting numbers in the past year, and looking forward to continue to see growth in the coming years in Arkansas. So in terms of our services, the first one I'll talk about is the consulting that we offer. So we meet our clients really where they're at with their business needs rather than offering a one-size-fits-all type of approach. Our services are all confidential, and we also are seeking, as we seek innovative ways to serve our clients' needs, we have engaged subject matter experts in specific areas like human resources, digital marketing, branding, agriculture, and some other areas. If any one of these areas is of interest to you, I'd encourage you to take advantage of this service that's available across our statewide network. And you can do that by either reaching out to your current consultant or registering online through our client portal. Throughout the year, each of our centers also offers a variety of events on different topic areas. Usually we offer these events in person at our regional centers. And for the time being at the Little Rock Center, we're still offering things virtually, and they're led by staff from across the state, as well as some guest speakers. The link at the bottom here has a way to access all of our events coming up. You can filter by month and see what's coming up in your area as well. So you can also sort by location. I also want to mention our market research services. So we subscribe to a number of proprietary industry databases, and this allows us to access current information across a variety of industries. Through these resources, we can help clients learn more about their competition, their customers, and trends in their fields of interest. Through our geographic information system, we can also map out critical information for potential business locations. This information includes things like customer demographics, drive times, and competitor locations. The information that we gather from the secondary market research and GIS mapping, our clients are strongly positioned to make informed decisions that are reflected in their business applications for funds. And this is just a kind of a snapshot of some of the market research that we offer for our clients. So you can see on the far left of this graphic, there's a map that shows radius drive time and can give folks an idea of where to map out their business locations within the state. We also have a few other odds and ends here that talk about demographics of the target customers that they're looking to reach. So these are all really high value pieces of information that otherwise are very expensive to access on your own through online searches. We encourage you to take advantage of our free services to be able to gather this information for your business planning needs. So my focus as the innovation specialist is on helping our state's technology-based companies. And again, this includes all companies and entrepreneurs interested in conducting new, often long-term research and development work with the end goal of developing new products and services that can then be sold in commercial market or to federal agencies. So applying for funding through the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Program is a detailed multi-step process, and we guide clients through every stage of that. So as you can see, while SBIR and STTR are my areas of expertise, that's just one thread of the ASBTDC's web of services. We assist clients with every aspect of business creation, operation, and management because they're all interwoven. So a client may come to us initially for one particular reason, like help with a funding proposal, but then end up working with us on exporting or their marketing strategy. And our consultants see each project through from start to finish. So I wanted to also go ahead and show you a video of some of our success stories with the SBIR program here. If there's any issues with hearing this, please drop a note in the chat or in the questions, and I'll check that out. Sometimes we've had that. But this will give you a sense of what our companies in the state have been doing and how they were able to engage our services to be successful in this program.
The valley of death that everyone talks about, it really is a valley of death. You have all these research technologies that never get out of the lab. Really, a big part of it is there is no middle ground for funding to get it far enough along so that you actually have a product.
There's significant hurdles to get over in the front end just to complete the research and development. Unix was formed to help bring better treatment to cancer patients who are having to interrupt their treatments or stop their treatments altogether due to the debilitating side effects of chemotherapy. SBIRs and STTRs are one of the major funding mechanisms that help catapult these new ideas and new technologies that are developed forward. By going through the STTR and SBIR process, we're able to achieve a milestone that we wouldn't have been able to achieve alone. And once we started moving forward with our idea and determined that we did want to take it and commercialize it, we reached out to ASBTDC, who helped us develop our SBIR applications as well as the STTR applications.
We are basically trying to reinvent water treatment. The old processes for wastewater treatment and dealing with contaminants are very old. We want to come up with new innovative technologies that can address the new contaminants that we're starting to see in our water that are harder to treat. You know, from the very beginning, when Shelby and I were starting the company, I learned very quickly that there's no way we could pitch to, say, a set of investors for money. We have nothing to sell yet. So SBIR and STTR really fills that gap. It's essentially free money. It's non-dilutive, and we get to test out ideas and get it to hopefully a prototype stage before we go looking for more investment. SBIR is awarded by government organizations, including USDA, the NSF, and a few others. It's a lot of funding to create innovative products within our country. The very first time that I applied to USDA SBIR, I won. The problem I was trying to address is with small-scale hydroponic farmers. I'm working to increase their production capacity with minimal investment. But I wouldn't have received that award if it wasn't for the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center. I had never written a grant before. The center helped me understand all of the hoops that you have to jump through to win an SBIR.
In 2018, we founded AMBOSS out of a technology we're developing called swarm 3D printing. The idea is to use a swarm of mobile robots to work together to do autonomous manufacturing.
Going into the grant, the biggest thing was the funding. You have to have funding to make your project work and to take an idea into a business. But then after going through it, you learn that it's not really just the funding. It's the market research that you get to do during the SBIR program.
ASBTDC has been instrumental in our entrepreneurial journey and navigating through this complicated SBIR application process.
Most of my recent work is aligned around tissue regeneration. Under the funding from the Department of Defense, we have worked on developing solutions for bone regeneration for problems that currently do not really have real solutions. As you probably imagine, as a researcher, as a scientist, as a professor, I do not really know too much about business. So this is where ASBTDC comes into
place. And basically, they do pretty much all the things that I don't know how to do. They help with the SBIR process. They advise on how to submit an SBIR proposal. They even advise you on how to form a company. So it can go from very basic to very complex. So that's what makes them absolutely needed for people such as myself.
The help and services provided by the ASBTDC has been incredible for us. Everything from those market research booklets that we get to be able to write our commercialization plan and to be able to write the market competition aspect of the proposal, we would not be able to do that without that kind of help.
One of the great things our company found as we began working with ASBTDC was that you don't have to be in Little Rock. It's Arkansas small business. It's Arkansas economic development. These resources are available to you wherever you are. Ran into a member of the chamber in our local community of Perryville and was able to put him in touch with the ASBTDC to get assistance with some ideas that he's been working on.
I just had an idea. I had this problem and this desire to solve a problem for hydroponic farmers, but that's all I had. I didn't have business experience. And so when I reached out to the Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center, they really held my hand through this process, and it really helped me win.
All right, so hopefully that was informative and helped to give a little bit of a personal touch to the work we do here and what our clients are up to all across the state. Definitely lots of different projects involving different skill sets and applications. So, and you can always refer back to that. That's on our YouTube channel, this video. All right, and we have helped clients win 74 awards to date. These take the shape of grants and contracts. So just to summarize, we're in a results-driven, high-performing program that's committed to providing quality services to meet the needs of our Arkansas entrepreneurs. Unique among Arkansas economic development organizations, we do serve businesses from any county, any industry sector, and at any stage of development. So at $3.7 billion annually, the Small Business Innovation Research Small Business Technology Transfer Program is really the largest source of funds for innovative companies that are conducting research and development work beginning at the proof of concept stage. As Shelby mentioned in the video, unlike other kinds of funding, these awards are non-dilutive and they don't require cost matches. So what that means, if you're not familiar with the terminology, is the government's not trying to take any ownership of your company, and you don't have to pay these back like you do a loan. So you might be wondering, what is SBIR? What is STTR? So first I want to mention that, that there does need to be alignment with your idea for a project and what the agencies are seeking to fund. Each agency has its own set of research topics that align with their mission, objectives, and these are the ones that they want to see responsive SBIR, STTR applications for. So federal agencies that have at least $100 million in their external research and development budgets are congressionally mandated to participate in the SBIR, or Small Business Innovation Research Program. These 11 agencies set aside 3.2% of their external research and development budget just for SBIR. And of those 11 agencies, the 5 largest have at least $1 billion in their external budgets for R&D. And these 5 agencies participate in STTR. They reserve 0.45% of their external R&D budget for that purpose. Initially, SBIR and STTR projects have high risk, but also they have high potential payoff. And what this means is that the risk of failure is high, but if the long-term project efforts are successful, then the payoff is huge in terms of significantly improved solutions for addressing critical market needs. The payoff for successful SBIR and STTR projects also includes increased number of high-paid technical jobs and new business growth. So oversight for this program is provided by the Small Business Administration, or SBA. This means that the applicant companies need to meet SBA's definition of a small business. The company must be primarily owned and operated by U.S. citizens or permanent residents of the United States. Companies are generally 500 or fewer employees. There can be some exceptions to this based on the industry area. The company needs to employ someone called a principal investigator, or PI, and this is the individual who will lead the company's research and development efforts. For SBIR, the PI needs to be at least 51% employed by the small business at the time of award. And for STTR, most agencies don't actually require the PI to be primarily employed by the company. But however, even in STTR, the PI does need to be qualified to oversee the work and be prepared to devote a minimum amount of time on the project. So I wanted to move into some of the world leaders that all got their start through the SBIR STTR program. We saw some state level successes. These are ones that made it to the national and even global level with their success. Qualcomm is the world leader in wireless technologies and services. And if you have a cell phone, you're likely using their services every single day. They won funding from the National Science Foundation and from the Department of Defense, over $1 million that allowed them to begin developing chips and hiring engineers. And through this funding source, they were also able to move into the consumer application market. Symantec is the global leader in security system storage and system storage management. They were able to acquire Norton and help them to triple their sales within a very short time frame. They were actually the very first recipient of an SBIR award in 1982. They used that to develop their breakthrough product, Q&A software. And since then, they've become a leader in this field of security software. And third is on the list here is iRobot Corporation. This company was founded by Massachusetts Institute of Technology roboticists that had the vision of making practical robots a reality. They originally developed something called the PackBot, which was for the military to help them with surveillance operations in areas that were too dangerous to send the warfighter. From there, they were able to develop other solutions for the commercial market, like the Roomba home vacuuming robot. So they're a good example, too, of how you could start out with the federal government as a customer, and then you still have the rights to go out into other commercial market applications to develop useful technology in there as well. The SBIR STTR program isn't meant to be a long-term funding source to sustain a business, but it is intended to help companies move all the way from the idea stage to commercial readiness level with their new and needed innovations. It offers a way to take advantage of small business and university partner expertise to address agency-identified critical need areas. In many cases, large industry players just don't have the bandwidth or the interest to conduct the long-term research projects that are required to fully develop and vet new innovations for the market. And for this reason, large companies like Lockheed Martin are interested in collaborating with small businesses, especially in the second phase of this program, to develop innovations that support their missions and goals. This program is really also meant to support economic growth across the nation, lead to more high-paying jobs, particularly in the scientific fields. One thing to keep in mind with SBIR STTR is that it does require the project team to learn the language of business so that they can effectively communicate the value of their proposed technology to potential customers and partners, and to begin building those relationships early, even as they are still in the early phase of this program, research and developing the technology. There are several different types of projects that this program is not intended to fund. One is basic research. This is traditional academic type, where the funding is used to help to research new solutions and new findings, hypotheses driven, but the knowledge gained is really not ever going to leave the academic community. And so it's not something that's translating out into commercial marketplace. It's more so to be shared in journals or at conferences, things of that nature. It's also not meant to be used to develop non-disruptive technologies, so ones that are only incremental improvements to products or services already in the market really aren't a fit for SBIR. They're looking for things that are more groundbreaking, maybe even creating new applications out there. versus just a small percentage improvement in performance. And finally, full-scale manufacturing. Although this program will support low-rate initial manufacturing, especially in phase 2, if you're ready to fully scale up, then you're likely beyond the realm of this program. It's really meant to just develop the technology prototype and finesse it, get it ready for market, but then after that, companies need to find other sources of funds for the next steps in reaching the market and scaling up for that. This program became part of congressional legislation in 1982 through the Small Business Innovation Development Act. And through this act, it became possible to award federal grants to small businesses to support federal R&D needs. As I mentioned before, the SBIR budget for this program is 3.2%. STTR that's set aside for those 5 agencies is 0.45%. And the SBA does provide oversight. So all of the agencies that are in this program need to report back to SBA on the progress made for their different awardee companies and how things have trended in terms of improvement over time since this program began. So SBIR is not a piece of permanent legislation, but it's been routinely reauthorized by Congress since it was established. So there's no real danger of this going away. It's a highly supported bipartisan program that the value of it is very obvious to all those involved. And so it's one that's going to stick around. In December of 2016, Congress reauthorized the program through September of 22 through the National Defense Authorization Act. So that was the latest passage that helped to extend it. Now let's move on to look at the agencies involved in this program. So here we have all 11 agencies in the SBIR program, and the ones in the blue bullet points tend to be more focused on grants versus contracts. Contract agencies are the ones in the orange bullet points at the bottom here. There are a few differences that I'll mention briefly about that. The grant-based agencies tend to have broader interest in terms of the research topics for which they're seeking responsive applications. So it can be an easier journey to find a fit within one of these grant agencies with your idea than a contract agency. Grant agencies also repeat the same topics over and over again each funding cycle, so their interests don't tend to shift a great deal. They see a strong need for the areas that they have listed as their topic areas, and until that need is fully met, it's unlikely that they're going to adjust their topics. The difference between them and contract agencies is that contract agencies want to be your initial customer, and so they know exactly what they're looking for to address their internal needs as an agency. For example, the Department of Defense is looking for solutions for the warfighter, and those often change to some extent over time. So what they're looking for is going to be reflected in different ways in their request for proposals within those topics. They're not as able to communicate with potential applicants as the grant agencies are, because they could be giving the appearance of a conflict of interest or bias towards one company versus another. So they have to be very careful to only talk about more technical questions about their topics versus giving specific feedback on a project idea, which is something that grant agencies are able to do year-round. Within the SBIR program, the principal investigator, as I mentioned earlier, does need to be primarily employed with the company at the time of award, and this individual provides oversight for the project. So it's the person that's most qualified to lead the effort and to respond to any questions that the team has as they progress through the work. But also they're reporting back to the agency on progress made. They do this both formally and in terms of progress reports, and also informally just in terms of communication with the program manager. If they have any questions or if the program manager has issues they'd like to discuss, they talk to the PI generally. The SBIR program does allow for some of the work to be outsourced to partners. So up to 1/3 or 33% of the work can be allocated in this way. There's quite a bit of flexibility on how that's done. Partners could be the universities, could be a federal laboratory. It could even be another business. It could also include consultants too. Within the STTR program, again, these are the 5 largest of those 11 agencies that also have an SBIR program. So unlike SBIR, it's actually required with STTR that there be a partnership that's formalized between the business and a nonprofit research institution. This could be a university, it could be a federal laboratory. And with this partnership, the business needs to perform at least 40% of the project effort as measured by the budget. The research institution partner needs to perform at least 30%. But you can see that it still allows for an additional amount so that the partner could be performing up to 60% on their own, or you could have a combination of partners. So it could be the university plus other businesses that are working with you. As long as the business is doing at least 40% of the work, that does allow more of the total effort to be outsourced to other groups. So that can be appealing for companies that really need to leverage the talent of the institutions, that in terms of the personnel, maybe also just the high dollar resources, facilities, equipment that otherwise would be difficult for them to invest in on their own for a project. The way that the relationships between these partners are formalized is through something called a cooperative research agreement. This is something that usually the agencies will ask for right before they make a final award decision. So it's not really due at the time of application, but it needs to be already on paper so that you're ready to send this to the agency if they decide to fund your project. And that agreement outlines the expectations in terms of how intellectual property will be shared over the course of the project, and once you reach marketplace, how royalties will then be shared between the two. Another major difference between SBIR and STTR is that the principal investigator can be employed outside of the small business generally. So that could mean that the PI could be an employee of the university and still serve in that capacity versus having to be primarily employed by the business. But I want to point out that one exception to this rule is the National Science Foundation. This agency does require the PI, whether you go SBIR or STTR route, to still be mainly employed by the business. They see that as something that shows the dedication of the company to long-term sustainability of the company and developing their new solutions to the market. So these awards do take the form of either grants or contracts. There's really no difference in terms of the money itself. It's still non-dilutive. It's still not a loan. It's free money in essence. There are some differences in terms of expectations from the funding agency and deliverables, things like that, to the government, if that's expected or not. For the most part, if you're brand new to this program, you'll probably start in phase 1, which is proof of concept feasibility research. This is where you only have an idea, or you might have done a little bit of preliminary work, but you don't have enough information to really show that the theory works in practice, that this technology can perform as you hope it will. That's what phase 1 is for. In phase 2, that's where you really want to get to this point where you have more money and more time to do prototype development and testing, really working hand in hand with your customers and making sure that the technology performs as desired in their actual operating conditions, so that by the time you exit this program, then you're ready to start selling directly to that customer. So to get a little bit more detail for you, phase 1 awards are between $100,000 and $250,000. It depends on how big the agency, how large these awards are. And it could be even higher than that. These are just the standard award sizes. The time frame is between 6 to 12 months generally. Most of that money goes to paying the labor on your project. So all those people that you saw in the video, they need to pay themselves and members of their team to perform the work. And usually these are high-pay scientific roles, So that money goes pretty quickly when you think about needing to compensate them for all of their project hours on these. So that's why you really don't have that much wiggle room to do extensive work in phase one. You're really just trying to do the minimum amount of work necessary to prove that the concept will work. Phase two, on the other hand, you do have more money and quite a bit more time. So it's between $400,000 and $1 million+ and 2 years. So that is really where you can do that prototype development work, test for safety, toxicity, do any clinical trials that might need to be done to prove safety in humans and that it works versus a control study. Definitely engaging consultants as needed, other subject matter experts to be able to weigh in and to validate what you're doing, that it is performing in the way the market needs it to. After phase two, there's not any SBIR, STTR dollars for phase three, but the government can continue to fund you, especially contract agencies, through something called a sole source contract agreement. So that's when iRobot, for example, would have continued working with Department of Defense to develop the PackBot until they had that need met internally as an agency. And so they did that through non-SBIR federal dollars. Once that DoD had that need met, they could then go out into the public and sell things like the Roomba in that way. Some agencies also offer phase 1 and 2 supplements because in some cases the time frames is just not enough to complete a project, and agencies understand that things don't always work exactly as you planned and you might need more time to really finalize a project or to do the due diligence that's needed to really prove that things work in the appropriate way. Companies that go through this program and win at least a phase 1 award have satisfied something called fair and open competition, which is part of Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 6. This means that after you've won an award, the government no longer has to compete you against other companies to continue putting money into your company for developing a new solution. So this is why the contract agencies have the ability to sole source contract with you even at a very early stage in the SBIR STTR program. It's probably all I'll say about that one, just because it can get, that's really all you need to know at this point. I do want to say this is a highly competitive program. You're competing with companies all across the nation. So odds of success in a phase 1 are between 15 and 30%, depending on the agency. Phase 2, it's between 30 and 50%. So you've already proven your credibility in phase 1 as a team, and both with the technology you're developing, your odds are going to go quite a bit up. The agencies can see that you have the ability to make good use of their money and deliver on that. I want to touch upon intellectual property as well. This is something that you don't have to have in place before you apply. You don't have to have it before you can win. But as you move through the program, especially in phase 2, you want to be thinking ahead about how will you protect your technology once it hits the marketplace. And so intellectual property is one of the best ways to do that, to have some kind of form of it, which can take the form of a patent, a trademark, a copyright. Depending on what you're doing, you'll probably have to consider what strategy makes most sense for your innovation. So the Bayh-Dole Act is a piece of U.S. legislation that was passed not long before this program went into place in 1980. It was actually bipartisan. Birch Bayh and Bob Dole passed this together, and it was groundbreaking at the time, and because it allowed for any entity that received federal dollars to have the first rights to pursue ownership of that invention that came out of that research and development work. Before this act was passed, any awardee companies that received these federal dollars had to give first rights to the government. The government completely owned everything they did and had all the rights to it. So there's really no incentive to think like an entrepreneur. You had no claims to what you were doing. It was all going to go back to the government anyway. But this was a different type of legislation because it did allow companies or allow awardees to begin thinking about how they could protect what they're doing and build a business around it, all these things that weren't possible before this time. So there is an expectation that you do need to commercialize with these funds. It's not something that's just automatic that you have these rights. You have to take the actions legally and otherwise to get properly set up to be successful in the marketplace. And the government does retain something called march-in rights, where if there was a national emergency, they could march in, and if your technology, you hadn't been moving it into the direction of reaching the commercial market, it's been sitting internal for substantial time, they could technically license your technology to an existing industry player to help expedite that process and get it out into the hands of the people who need it faster. But to date, this is a right that hasn't been exercised by any of the agencies, so it's nothing to keep you from exploring this program. It's just something to keep in mind that they do retain that right to the march-in. So what are some steps you can be taking to prepare for IP protection without maybe getting a lawyer involved very early on? That does get expensive. So first of all, we are on a first-to-file patent system, which means that we're in line with the rest of the world. Once you have enough data to file a patent, you want to go to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and file, because that's a placeholder for the date where you came up with this idea for the technology and you have enough data to create a patent around it. At that point, others don't have the right to copy, replicate what you're doing legally. There's also something called a provisional patent, which will hold your place for a year. Then you still have to file for a full patent. You do need to, I mentioned before that your IP plan needs to be articulated, especially in phase 2. The agencies want to see that you've been thinking about how to protect yourself, how to protect your technology from being copied by others. So this is something to be thinking about, even a little bit in phase 1, but especially in phase 2, to be able to put that on paper. So you can take some steps now to see what's out there already, what's already been patented, and how closely your technology aligns with that. You can do some preliminary patent searches on USPTO or United States Patent and Trademark Office.gov site. They actually have a really good site that walks you through all the steps involved, this process of learning about a patent and how to search other patents that are already out there. I'd also say that another important search to do is to search SBIR and STTR awards, starting with the SBIR.gov site. Even though they might be pre-patent, you want to know what's coming down the pipeline that might be relevant to your scientific space. That way you can make sure that you still hold a unique niche in the market, assuming that all these awards do successfully reach commercial market as well. So speaking of these kind of searches, we're going to move into market research. I want to just give you some screenshots that show you how you can go to SBIR.gov and search for topics and awards. And this will just be useful early stage work to explore the program for you. So starting with the closed topics is always a good idea, because there are 11 agencies and they're all on their own unique funding cycles throughout the year. If you only searched open topics, you wouldn't see which ones are not open now, but expected to be open later down the road, and what are their areas of interest for which they're seeking responsive applications. So doing this closed topic search is the best way to get started. And you'll do that by going on SBIR.gov, then to the funding menu, drop down to where you see topic areas here. And then you would just select closed off to the left side under funding topics. You can see there's option to hit closed. And so here we just had some keywords entered in for robot education to see what would pop up. And it looked like there were 8 results. The ones that you can see here are for National Science Foundation. And so what you can do once you get to this page on the actual site is click on the hyperlink for the topic to read more about it. There's usually some good backgrounder about it, and get you a sense of whether or not this might be a fit for you. for your idea. At ASBTDC, and really you can make this yourself pretty easily, we have a Excel template where you can track some of the key findings from this search. And so I always advise clients to plug in what they find along the way so they have a good reference point later when they want to see what all was uncovered through their searches. I'd also advise searching prior awards because, again, you want to see what's coming down the pipeline in your scientific area. Things that might not have shown up in that patent search could also still be in the SBIR STTR award database. So from SBIR.gov, you would go to the reports menu and drop down to award data. Just want to check one thing on the chat box. Okay. So after you get to award data, you would just enter in that same keyword search that you did before and see what awards might have been made in response to those very same closed topics that you've already located. So when robot education was entered here and then the search bar was hit, you can see that a couple of awards pop up for NASA, which is interesting. So what you would do to learn more about these topics is click on that hyperlink title for each of those, for each of the titles for the projects, rather, not topics. And these are the summary that is provided here. That's the only piece of information that's made public once an award is made to a given company. So the company actually writes it themselves a brief summary or abstract of their project, and that'll be something that you can view when you do these award searches. Again, track all your findings from these searches for awards so that you can have something to go back to later. These could be competitors, but they could also be partners for you. So you want to get things like the business contact's name as well. And the principal investigator often is the same person as the business contact. It's a good idea to do a separate research on that person to see what kind of publications they put out there, if they've been a speaker at major conferences, just to see what their activities look like, especially since they got this award, just to make sure that you're up to speed on this company and what they've been doing over the most recent years. Another type of market research that's just as important is customer discovery. And this is when you want to really talk with potential customers that you have. Don't just research them online and access our secondary market research, which is all great, but you want to actually have these conversations to learn about their challenges with their current solutions. What are some factors to consider in the operating environment? What are things that interact with their equipment? Any kind of environmental issues, those kind of things you won't be able to find out any other way than having a conversation with a potential customer. You also want to find out what they'd like to see in a new solution exactly, versus trying to pitch your idea. This is all about listening to them, finding out what their needs are, what they'd like to have in something new, and what would trigger them to buy to buy a new solution. It's usually a combination of performance variables plus cost point. So gather as much information as you can through conversations with potential customers to really assess the need and make sure that you can develop something that's in line with that need. Of course, it doesn't hurt to let them know that you're planning to develop something that will help with their challenges, but I would refrain from getting too in depth of what that entails, especially since you're still formulating that idea at this stage. But these customers, these aren't ones that you just talk to once and be done with the relationship. I would view this as a long-term investment in building something with these groups, because you want to be selling to them long-term, and just in your application, they can also be folks that provide you letters of support, which really help to enhance the quality of your application, make it more competitive if the agency can see that you've already got a clear pathway to the marketplace, as reflected in a letter of interest and ideally even an order letter from these customers. So keep in mind that this is a situation where both of you can benefit from the relationship. So be sure that you're thinking about that even early on. I've mentioned that ASBTDC offers secondary market research. We have 10 proprietary databases that allow us access to information across a range of industry areas. And our staff create customized binders that are tailored for our clients' needs. A few things before you actually start writing that some of these are kind of dry steps, but essential to being able to get an application out. And the first is the registrations. So you might know that you need to register your company with the state before you can have an official company set up as a for-profit, which is, again, that's part of the requirements of being eligible for this program. So when you do establish a company in the state, you would receive an employee identification number or EIN number. This usually comes from the Internal Revenue Service. You also need to request a Dun & Bradstreet number or DNB number. And then there's a series of federal registrations. These are a handful. There's sometimes others depending on the agency. But these are ones that are required to formally allow you to do business with the federal government. They can't make awards to your personal bank account, so you do need to have a separate company bank account that you are able to link with, especially with your SAM.gov registration. That stands for System for Awards Management. I would think every state probably has a resource like this, but in Arkansas, we have the Arkansas Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or APTEC. Staff also taxpayer funded, like our center, to help you with things like preparing for contract opportunities, but also all the technical steps for registering in SAM.gov. So I always send our clients to them for assistance with that particular registration. It could be a little cumbersome to do on your own if you're not familiar with some of the language in there. But bottom line, all of these registrations are free. They can all be done online. And most of them aren't that burdensome to do, but the processing time can be substantial. The agencies can take 2 to 6 weeks to process these, so you want to do them early, not wait until you've written your proposal and then, oh, okay, now I'll do these registrations, because that could keep your application from even being able to go out. So you need to do these earlier rather than later in the process. I also highly recommend that you actually engage the agency that you want to submit to before you start writing your proposal. So contract agencies I mentioned earlier, they're not as open to communication year-round because they can't show any competitive bias towards one particular applicant. But they can talk with you, answer your questions about the technical topics. So be sure when you read those topics, look at the references that are listed below each of those, or the ones that you're interested in anyway. Make sure you're familiar to show that you've done your homework and learning as much as you can before initiating this conversation. And then think about the actual questions that you have. It could, for example, be something spec related, specification related, that you might have a question about. And those are the kind of questions that they can answer for you. Grant agencies, I would say you can engage them more heavily than the contract agencies. And a great tool to engage them with is a project summary or a pitch, depending on what agency it is. This is just a very brief overview of what you'd like to do in the project and what the long-term impact could be if you're successful. And that gives them enough information to be able to make a judgment as to whether this is likely a fit or not for their topic area. And they can often give you suggestions for how to strengthen it to be a stronger match for them. Or they could say, it's not a fit for us, but it could be a better fit for this institute or this topic area. So they're actually really helpful to help you vector it into the right spot and save you time if it's just not a fit for them, you know not to pursue it. It's really in their best interest to be honest with you because they want to get the most competitive applications possible too, and not review ones that just aren't even in the ballpark of what they would consider to be their mission and objectives. So do take the time to draft a summary pitch, get some feedback from, if you're in Arkansas, from our center staff, and we'll be happy to help you refine that before you send that out to the program manager that's associated with your research topic of interest. So there's some great resources out there to help you learn more. This is very much a cursory overview of the program of this presentation. You can certainly dive deeper if you go to sbir.gov, check out the online tutorials that they offer. I put directions here for how to access those under the resources menu, tutorials. And then you'll see there's 18 different courses, all topic specific. Different learning styles require different formats. So you'll see that some of these are video, PDF, or a combination. I would recommend starting with program basics if you're brand new to the program. In the state of Arkansas, and I would suspect most states, there is some supplemental state funding available to help you with the different gaps along the way as you go through this program. It's not a sustained source of grants and contracts. You apply, there's a waiting period after you apply where you are waiting for the funding to come in. And the same thing happens when you go from phase 1 to phase 2. You still have to go through a period of time where you just don't have money coming in through this program. So those are the times to look at what your state has to offer to help you stay, keep that momentum going, keep your team members employed, and keep the research moving along so you keep on the appropriate path to reaching market when you're hoping to. In Arkansas, we have the Technology Transfer Assistance Grant, or TTAG, which is really phase 0 of this program, I would say. This is where you maybe engage a third party to help you with the writing process for this grant in collaboration with ASBTDC. You could also engage some kind of an industry expert to help you learn more about the field. And that could be another use of TTAG funds. There's several different ways that could be used. But it's more so to get expert consulting assistance or expert advice to help you prepare the most quality application possible. There's also our technology development program. It's a royalty financing, average award of $50,000, but up to $100,000. That often can be used to bridge the gap between a phase 1 and 2 award. I think you might remember back in the video, Lauren of Catalyze H2O was talking about the valley of death. So this is something that helps sustain a company during those gap periods where you want to keep everything alive. So that's a great program on very favorable terms for awardees and broadly able to be used as well. Anything that moves technology from the lab or the field to market generally can fall under this category, what they'll fund. Seed Capital Investment Program is working capital up to $500,000 for companies. That's often a better fit for companies that are further along the pathway, maybe post phase 2 of the SBIR STTR program. We also have SBIR Matching Grant, which is a tremendous value for companies that win these awards but need some extra funds to maybe cover expenditures not allowed through the program, or to keep the project extended. It can be applied at the projected end of the project to again bridge that gap in time where they need to keep the research advancing. So in Arkansas, it's $50,000 match for a phase 1, or up to $50,000, and up to $100,000 for a phase 2 award. We also offer tax incentives through a couple different programs, equity tax incentive program, and the research and development, or the research incentive as well. At ASBTDC, we have a newsletter called Lab to Launch that goes out every month. We include success stories. We actually have one coming out today. If you're already subscribed, you keep an eye on your email, you'll see that. So success stories like the ones you saw in the video, we try to always feature companies that win state or federal funds so that you can be inspired by them, learn from them, and see really just what activity is going on all around the state. We also share upcoming funding opportunities across the 11 agencies. New programming that's being offered through our center. Most of that's free of charge for the most part. And at the bottom, you can see our link for how to join our email lists. You can also access that pretty readily from our website if you want to do it that way. Also, speaking of our offerings for technology clients, we have an accelerator program that we've concluded our our 8-week NIH cohort, which started this past January. This next one will be for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This program is really for those that are brand new to SBIR for phase 1. Either you've not ever submitted before, or you submitted but not been successful, and you want to learn more about the process, really how to succeed as you develop the proposal in each step of the way. And so this is a good way to be a part of a smaller group of folks that are all in the same boat as you, and meet weekly with them as well as our staff to learn how to really be successful in all the steps necessary to prepare a winning application for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This program will kick off in June, and application is out there now. You can apply and find more details on this link at the bottom of the page. It is open to anyone across the state. You don't have to be a company just yet. You can just have a plan to become a company. So it's pretty wide open in terms of what we allow in our eligibility. We just want to be able to help you and hopefully do that as a group so that you can all learn from each other as well as our team. And that is everything I have for my presentation. You can reach me at this contact information here, my work cell, email, and then you can learn more about us at our website and our social media. Facebook and LinkedIn is all here. And you will have these slides within a couple of days, so that will be available for reference too. I also want to have our institutions here to show you our affiliations. But now I'll open up to Q&A from everyone. And I'll go ahead and check out what questions have come in. As a reminder, you can send me your questions on the question pane of your control panel, so please do that at any point. If you think of something later too, you're feel free to call or email me. I'll be happy to help you in that way. The first question asks, is there any help in terms of the cost and guidance to file for a patent attorney, etc.? In terms of the program, most of the time, legal services are considered unallowable cost. So, but that doesn't mean you can't still find a way to do it. So there is something called a fee, or 7% of the total budget is considered your profit or fee that you can use however you like. And so that can definitely be used for legal services. A lot of the agencies also have something that goes on top of an SBIR STTR award called Technical and Business Assistance, or TABA, which is additional funding to help you with the technology commercialization activities that just aren't traditionally supported through the SBIR grant or contract alone. So these kind of services that are usually unallowable, you could also potentially request vendors through their TABA programs that will allow you to pay for legal services. So that could be another way of doing that. I've seen a lot of agencies pick up TABA programs, so that's very encouraging as well. Next question asks, if your small business has an EIDL loan during the COVID period with payment arrangements and payments are current, are you still eligible for SBIR? Yeah, there should be no reason why you can't have a loan and apply for SBIR at the same time. They're completely different types of avenues of funding. The SBIR, you do have to build a project around the budget request. So it's a matter of being prepared to perform on that project, that scope of work that is actually achievable by your team. And again, you don't pay back an SBIR like you do a loan. So it's a different avenue of funding altogether. The next question asks, are applicants required to be compliant with NIST, NISP, and CMMC cybersecurity protocols? That one I'm not well versed on what those entail. As a general rule, I mean, you want to make sure that your final version of technology does fit any regulations, whatever they fall under, whatever category they fall under. It needs to be hitting all those standards before you try to successfully compete it against other technologies on the market. So to that extent, you need to know what's required, if it's Food and Drug Administration, if it's any kind of toxicity levels that you need to be above that level. then those are things to be aware of and make sure that you hit those milestones in your project work before you try to sell that on the marketplace. But for this particular question, I'm not sure of the answer. So sorry about that. I can check on that for you. Yeah, I don't see any other questions coming in at the moment. Oh, here's another one. Can the funding be used to cross other states or used for projects in other states? And that's a good question. You can have partners that aren't all in your same state when you perform in these projects. So you can definitely, if you're in Arkansas, you can engage a consultant from Arizona, for example, and that's perfectly fine. No issues with that. The only thing that could be problematic is if you're trying to perform any of the work outside of the U.S. altogether, because it is a national program. The money is meant to grow the U.S. economy, not the other, not a global economy. So there are some exceptions where you can get permission from an agency to do work if you need to access a special population group or a plant or something like that that's just not found in the United States. But for the most part, you need to be able to be preferred to work with partners that are based in the United States. So that's the only thing I would say. And if you're looking at state funds, you'd have to be just be mindful that you can't usually apply for state funding through other states that your business isn't registered there. At least that's how it works here in Arkansas. So if you're looking for some supplemental funding, it's really going to likely just be for your company, your home state. Right. I don't see anything else at the moment, but again, I'll be sending out these slides in the recording within a couple of days. You'll have that for your reference. Within that GoToWebinar email, you also have a link to the video that we played earlier in the presentation and the next event that we'll be hosting, so you can go ahead and register for that one if you haven't already. And that's all I've got for you. I really appreciate your time and attention. I hope this was useful information and inspires you to explore the program further and think about preparing an application yourself. And definitely engage our staff or assistants. We have higher than national win rates if you do go through our center. And so it's just going to only help you to be more competitive out there with others looking at the same pot of money. So I hope you all have a wonderful day and enjoy this presentation. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much, everybody.